Next up is our bite mark or pattern injury requirements. This is one of the areas that it seems to be kind of the toughest to meet. And the ABFO has really worked towards trying to find a way to make it easier to get this requirement, but still have the appropriate assessment to make sure, again, that you can successfully challenge the examination. They don't want people who are just not prepared enough to take the exam, spend the time, energy, and money doing the exam just to not pass. So let's go through these requirements. Overall, you've got to have 4 cases. Those can be current or historical cases. And out of those 4, the minimum of 1 has to have gone to comparison. So you could theoretically only have 1 case that you did a comparison with, and the other 3 cases just simply went through the injury analysis portion. A sub-requirement in this area is that one of the cases has to be an ABFO case that basically did go to comparison. So it's kind of, if you do an ABFO case, you're going to meet this requirement as well as the requirement of having a comparison case. So you kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone just by doing this ABFO case. And if you take the ABFO pattern injury workshop, which is held in even-numbered years, if you successfully pass that, you're going to get credit for 2 Bitemark cases, and you're going to get a case that satisfies Part B, which is you've got to do an ABFO case that goes to comparison. So not only are you going to get 2 cases, but you're going to also check mark another kind of sub-requirement in this area. Again, if you do the workshop, you're going to get 2 cases. But let's say that you can't do the workshop or you're just really struggling to get additional Bitemark cases. The ABFO does have a repository that you can do cases from. There is a maximum allowance of 2 repository cases, so you can only use the repository for 2 cases. You cannot get all 4 cases from the repository, just an FYI. The way that you get a repository case is similar to how you do for age. You contact the chair of the Bitemark committee, again, that is listed on the ABFO website, and you will have to show proof of one of the following: either successful completion of the ABFO workshop, or you will have to submit 2 Bitemark cases for their review. Again, that is to make sure that you are capable of completing the repository cases in the required manner. So, if you don't have 2 historical cases or current cases, then the only way to get the repository is to complete the workshop. For submission of these requirements for your application, if you're using ABFO cases, either through the workshop or the repository, you should get a completion letter that tells you the case credit that you're getting. Those are the letters that you will submit as proof that you've got those case credits. So very similar to the previous letter for civil lit and age that you've seen. This is the letter for the pattern injury. You'll note right here, 2 Bitemark cases. Again, retain this letter because it's your responsibility to make sure you have that available for submission when the time comes. Kind of the little, another kind of sub-requirement for pattern injury is that each case that went to comparison, you need to have compared to at least 1 suspect dentition. So in other words, if it can go to comparison, you need to have gone to comparison with it. But remember, you only have to have 1 case that goes that far. If you do the ABFO workshop, you will have met all of those requirements that I just said. As with age and ID, there is a casework summary sheet. These cases will need to be listed on this sheet, all the appropriate information filled in, and then signed off by the appropriate person. Once again, if you fill these out as you go, get signatures as you go, it will be so much easier for you down the road. So here's again an example. If it's a historic case, you'll stay historic case. If it's a current case, you'll list the jurisdiction that it was for. If it's workshop, you'll kind of list that out, kind of like we saw in age. Primary investigator means, did you collect all the records? Did you do any evidence collection, etc.? If you did not do that, it's a no. If it's an ABFO case, yes or no. Again, workshop cases are yes, repository cases are yes. And then which case are you submitting? You should only have one yes here because you only have to submit one case. So just some overall tips and tricks for this area, because again, it's one of the harder areas to get the requirements. The ABFO workshop is one of the more efficient ways to check mark a lot of boxes. You get 2 cases, you're going to get access to the repository, and you're going to get an ABFO approved case and a case that went to comparison. So if you successfully complete the ABFO workshop, basically you just need 2 more cases, and it just opens more doors for you to be able to get that. I will say, if you have 0 experience with pattern injuries or bite marks, do not participate in the workshop first. I would tell you to observe it. It's very difficult to pass this workshop without any kind of previous experience or education. So I think it's more advantageous to observe it first, get a good background, and then try to participate. Hopefully everybody's kind of putting 2 to 2 together and seeing that you can in fact get 4 cases through ABFO means. You can max out 2 from the workshop and then 2 from the repository. Again, this was developed to try to help meet these requirements, as it was recognized that it's very challenging to get Bitemark cases. But I do think it's important to note that you still have to have 1 non-ABFO case to submit as part of your application. So you're still going to have 1 outside Bitemark case regardless. Again, you can max out the ABFO cases. You can go get all 4 and then just use that extra case in your additional case requirement. So how do you get outside cases? If you're not affiliated and you're just not getting these cases from an outside source, there are some potential avenues that I just think you should be aware of. Structured fellowship programs, those typically will have education in pattern injury, and as such, you'll typically get case credit for that through that program. In the past, there have been basically kind of mini residencies in pattern injury analysis and comparison. Participation in and successful completion of those residencies can be a way to get case credit. The last way that you could potentially get an outside case is by doing it under the mentorship/supervision of an ABFO diplomate. Notice there are asterisks there, and why are there asterisks there? Simply because this is really kind of a last resort. The C&E committee has really been trying to be understanding of the challenges in getting some of these requirements, and as such, this is kind of the way they are addressing some of those challenges. So it is possible for you to get an outside case by working with an ABFO diplomate. Now, the caveat is you need to reach out to the chair of C&E committee before you start the case to make sure they will accept that case as part of your requirements, as well as basically verify it's an appropriate case and an appropriate mentor for you to get case credit. Not all diplomates do Bitemark cases, so we want to make sure that you're getting an appropriate case that is going to be evaluated at the appropriate level. So reach out to the C&E committee if you're struggling to get this requirement and feel like you need to do a case with a mentor. As we've said, for ID and age, you are going to be required to submit a case in completion. So again, that means the official request, all the photographs, the workshop or the work product, the report, and any other information you use to complete the case. Keep in mind, this cannot be an ABFO workshop or repository case. It's got to be an outside case. And as with the others, pick a case that shows good analysis. I would typically tell you, if you can, show comparison, because they're going to want to see how you approach that process. And make sure that you've got a good report to submit so that they can, again, really really assess your skills and your knowledge in this area. There is another kind of big warning paragraph, I guess, for lack of a better word. Cases that are ABFO cases and cases that you submit as part of your application are property of the ABFO. And what that means is you are not going to get any of your materials back once you submit them to the ABFO, be it for a workshop or a application. Those then become property of the ABFO, and that previous paragraph basically states you are not to share any of that material. You are not to share it with other interested forensic dentists. You are not to share it outside of basically your work product for the workshop or as part of your application. I will tell you they take that very, very seriously. So if they find out that you have shared any of that ABFO case materials, you will probably have a hard time becoming certified because you've just violated something that you've said you wouldn't do. For the workshop, you have to sign a non-disclosure. So again, just don't do it. Don't share ABFO Bitemark case materials in any way, shape, or form. If you need a picture, Google it. There's plenty of Bitemark photos on Google. Again, I don't want to see any of you guys getting in trouble for doing something that just isn't necessary.